Welcome to the Toddcast.
Thanks for having me.
Dianna Daou from
That's it.
truecoaching.com.au. You claim that you are a coach and not a tutor. So I remember the first time I met you, you told me about your business.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so I help school kids, and I'll let you get into that. But then I was like, yeah, you're a tutor. That was my thought. Like, I listened to your little spiel.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, you're a tutor. But the more that I've got to know you, I think you might be a coach.
Thank you.
So
I can add that to my website, verified by Toddcast.
you might, Dianna might be a coach. So tell me, what's the difference between a tutor and a coach, and why are you different?
Okay. Well, traditionally tutors are subject specific. So you get a math tutor or a science tutor or an English tutor.
Yep.
And they focus on the immediate problem at hand. So you need help with drawing a graph. You need help with algebra. It's all very short term, very results driven. Generally, there's a dependence that starts to form when you have a tutor and they're constantly helping you with these small problems. Whereas with a coach, it's not necessarily subject specific. So I could help a student with math, English, Chinese, whatever the language might be or subject might be, because I help them more with their approach to learning. So you've been given new information. How do you process it? How do you summarize it? How do you present it? How do you ensure you have an effective study space? How do you manage your time? So the skills and approaches that I teach are applicable across the board, and there's a lot more of a focus on the process and the progress as opposed to the results. And naturally, when you're getting better bit by bit every week, improving your time management, improving your writing and your summarizing, eventually the results come. So it's a bit more of a holistic approach to studying as opposed to a math tutor or a science tutor.
Yeah, okay. That makes a bit more sense now that you put it in that regard. Because, yeah, like you're saying, the subject specific. Because I think the hardest thing about schooling is the way that they give you information. And, like, it's basically, from what I can remember back at school upon my reflection now, is that it's just one big memory test.
Yeah.
Like, just remember this because we're going to ask you this question another time. And unless I was really into it, I didn't learn anything. Like a lot of the maths stuff I've forgotten, the algebra. But then I think that if I do reflect upon some stuff, like I'll be like, I kind of pick it up, but I don't remember or why I should apply it. And like there is so many things in my occupation where algebra is probably a great thing. Like once I got into Excel, like using a lot of spreadsheets and so forth, and dealing with formulas. Where I was like, well, if I actually knew how to apply it, it would be way better. So do you find this happening a lot, or is it just me?
No, absolutely. I think ongoing issue with schools at all levels is that students are taught to the test, which means they're taught just enough or given just enough information for them to go read 1,000 times over and regurgitate on the test. You see the biggest jump in this when they enter VCE, and because VCAR, the body writes the exams as opposed to the school, you find that they want to start challenging students to think outside the box and use their analytical skills, but the school is opposing that by teaching to the test and encouraging I wouldn't say encouraging, but not teaching any alternative to the memorize and regurgitate. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest issues we find here is that that's not the skills that are necessary to progress in life, because the availability of information is there between Google and any other search engines and the World Wide Web. Yeah. Getting information and remembering information is no longer a skill that's required. It's more being able to use that information and apply that information. Yeah. And that's where I think schools are letting people down. They're not developing their skills to analyze or critically think when they're given information and then figure out how and where to apply it.
Yeah, okay. Because that's a huge that's a big change in the school system, I guess. Now is the information highway. We've got the internet, where like I remember when I was at school, we just started to use it, and it was easier to plagiarize stuff. But now, like I'm sure kids have written essays on everything. They have everything posted online. Like I'm sure I could.
Most assignments go through what we call Turnitin, which is basically something that compares your work to the whole internet. So even when I was at university, before I'd submit an assignment, I have to submit it through Turnitin and print out the report.
Yeah.
And it would break it down and say 1% of this report is identical to this website.
Yeah.
1% of this report is identical to a student from Oxford University who wrote a paper in 89. Like, it starts to break it down. And because there is so much information out there, it's harder to plagiarize now.
Yeah, because we've got so much more data set that we can compare it against. Tell me, because obviously a lot of the listeners of the Toddcast, because there's thousands of them, they would be sitting here so far going, well, I'm not school age, because like obviously the people listening are not school age, but what are some of the cool little learning techniques or tricks is there anything that you could provide people in adult life that it can help? Because like you deal with teens, right?
Yeah.
But tell me some stuff like how can you help adults in their learning, or what are things that you found in?
Yeah, well, obviously in line with as well as going to uni and studying, I've been in the workforce, so I've had to apply a lot of these productivity hacks and tips and tricks in the workforce. So the biggest things that come to mind are probably around your time management and keeping focused, as well as busting the myth of multitasking, which is not a thing. Yeah. So I do work a little bit with adults.
I'm good at it.
It's not a thing, and you're not good at it.
We'll get to that in a moment, but yeah. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things around focus, productivity, ensuring the environment is working with you, not against you. But I really want to prove to you that you're not good at multitasking.
I'm a fantastic multitasker. I'm really good. I'm so good at talking on the phone and Instagramming at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm really good at pretending I'm interested in things when I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about something else. No, I think I can think it. I can think of two things at the same time.
All right.
They say that's impossible.
It is physically impossible. Basically, what happens is that as opposed to your mind simultaneously thinking about two things, you're not having two concurrent thoughts. You're actually alternating between the two thoughts.
Yeah.
And every time you alternate, there's a bit of a lag time. The exception to this is when you've got your, I guess, subconscious or unconscious mind and then your conscious mind. So, for example, you could be doing the dishes, which is something that you almost do unconsciously, right? And talking to someone, having a conscious conversation. The difference is you can't engage in two conscious and active thoughts or activities at the same time.
Yeah.
You can't drive and text at the same time.
Make
What's actually happening is your mind and your focus is shifting between your phone and the road. And every time you do that, there's a lag, there's a blank spot. And I can actually show you what that looks like.
Okay, how do I do that?
All right, you've got a pen and paper.
Oh, yeah. Here we go, pen and paper.
So what I want you to do first is on one line, just write A through to H.
Now, you're going to have to really describe this because I'm on iTunes and Spotify, not just YouTube. So these people can watch, but
fantastic.
Everyone else can. So what do I got to do? A to H.
A.
See, I didn't multitask that one.
A, B, C, D through to H. Not just yet. And then in a line below it.
Yeah.
So that the A to H and the 1 to 8 are lined up.
Yeah.
You're going to write 1 through to 8.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So what it's going to look like is two lines, A through to H at the top and 1
numbers.
to 8 at the bottom.
So you do one at a time, right?
Yeah. So do A through to H and then 1 through to 8. It's pretty easy given how you've done this.
Yeah.
1 through to 8.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I've just done that on one line. For the audio. Yeah. And then what I've got to do? Numbers.
1 through to 8. Now I want you to do that again because you're not meant to pause in the middle. You're not meant to pause in the middle.
Oh, so now.
Okay. Do that again.
Oh.
Right, A through to H, 1 through to 8, the same way. Yeah. The same way, but don't pause. Just go all the way through.
What? Oh, so do alphabet first and then numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. D, E, F, G, H, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Perfect. So basically now you've completed two tasks. You completed the first task, which was A to H, and then you completed the second task, which was 1 to 8.
Yeah.
Relatively easy. Things you're both comfortable with and relatively quick.
Yeah.
Now you're going to do essentially the same thing again, but this time you're going to alternate between the two tasks. Okay. So the end result's still going to be the same. You're still going to have A to H and 1 to 8.
Yeah.
But this time when you're writing it, you're going to write A on the first line, then
Yeah.
1 on the second line, then B on the first line, then 2 on the second line.
Oh, okay.
Essentially
so up,
mimicking,
down, up, down.
yeah, essentially mimicking the action of switching between 2 tasks or multitasking.
Yeah.
So I want you to give that a go.
Okay. What?
Nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of difficulty, was that easier, the same, or harder?
Look, it was a little harder, and if you look at the quality, it's a little bit off.
All right. And it did actually take you a little bit longer.
It did, yeah.
All right. So basically what's happened here is you are multitasking.
This is the results on YouTube. There you go.
You are multitasking. So you were doing 2 tasks at the same time and switching between the 2.
Yep.
Every time you switched, there was a lag,
Yeah.
right, which added to the amount of time. And then because you were switching, your mind wasn't able to focus on either of them enough to get a good quality result.
Yeah, okay.
So you've got...
It did drop in quality significantly.
Absolutely.
Like, I'll back that up.
And you even paused on the G and the 7. You like had a moment like what comes after 6, right? So basically what you see is a drop in quality and an increase in time just by trying to multitask.
Do you know why I had that pause?
Why?
Because when I did G and 6, I was like that airplane, the G6. Seriously, that's what went in my head.
Yeah.
I was like G6, and I was like a G6.
Because you've given your brain
so
an
embarrassing.
opportunity to
Yep.
stop.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas when you're doing A through to H, it's so well versed in your brain that you could just get all the way through it. But as soon as you give your brain an opportunity to let an outside thought come in,
So do you
it
text and
does.
drive?
No.
It's one. Look,
Don't text and drive.
I'm actually bad at text and drive. I text and drive all the time.
Yeah.
And look, I will be honest. There's times where I kind of like look up and I'm like,
Yeah. Like, how did I get here? What happened?
well, yeah, there's that. But
Yeah.
I heard someone once told me, going back to what you were saying earlier about conscious mind, unconscious
Yeah.
mind. Someone told me that one time driving can sometimes get you in a state of hypnosis or something
Yeah.
similar to hypnosis, where all of a sudden you have that feeling. And I've done that before, where I've gone,
Yeah.
how did I get here? I can't remember the turns before me. Or
That
something.
has to do with it's similar to habits, right? So when you're driving the same path or a similar path to what you do every day all the time, eventually you're doing it in a semi-unconscious or subconscious state.
Yep.
Right? So, for example, which shoe do you tie first?
Probably my right.
All right. Every morning do you get up and go, which shoe am I going to tie first?
No.
Or do you just do it?
Yeah, I just do it.
Right? You brush your teeth in a certain way without knowing it. When you walk up to a car, you don't go, which door am I going to open? How am I going to open this?
Yeah,
Which
'cause I'm
hand am
driving.
I going to use?
Yeah, true.
Right?
You just do it.
All of these
The
actions
tasks.
become very subconscious. So
Mhm.
there's thousands of things that you do every day that you don't even know you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you know you're doing them, but you're not consciously doing them. So when you're driving the same path, usually to or from home
Mm-hmm.
and work, and you do it so often, it almost becomes
Mm-hmm.
subconscious and unconscious. And that's a lot of accidents happen within 5 kilometers of the home.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Most accidents do, because that's where people feel most comfortable and enter
Yeah.
that state of kind
And
of
you
subconscious.
drop your guard, and you're not taking in your environment.
Yeah.
Do you think? Because then, having said that, like, there's since the Industrial Revolution, which, like, don't quote me on this, happened sometime in the 40s or whatever. But since then, there's been
Yeah.
a big bang, and then we're saying we're in this resurgence because of a global economy, etc. We'll get into that another time. But the evolution of some of the tasks that we have. So, like, do you think that we're getting better at multitasking, or will our brain develop that? Because, like, if you go back further enough, there's a theory that the throwing arm took us from out of the trees and into like a humanoid, a Homo sapien type thing. It was like the throwing arm. So we evolved that action, and that gave us the ability to hunt instead of being hunted, etc. And then we got smarter, better, whatever, and it kind of moved from there.
Yeah.
Do you see any advancements in evolution in terms of?
I think a common misconception is despite society having evolved so rapidly, obviously, and it's still evolving so rapidly every day, biological evolution takes millions of years. Like you're talking about the throwing arm, that didn't just happen overnight. Like it went from everything from bipedal to brain increase to diet change to like it's and tools and everything. So biologically, we're actually not as significantly advanced from cavemen as we think we are.
Yeah.
And that shows every day. So people go, yeah, we can multitask and we can this and we can that. Why do we have such high levels of anxiety or depression or anything like that? It's because we can't, because we're not programmed for all of this stimulus. We're not programmed to multitask. But today we're saying we should. And that's how we should be, and that's what we should be able to do. But our biology hasn't quite caught up yet, which means a lot of the ways we learn and process information is still in that caveman state, which is really survival. Yeah. So everything we process is about survival. So people get bored or people get anxious. It's either because there's no perceived stress and it's making them bored, or there's a high perceived stress, which these days might be psychological stress, and that's causing the feelings of anxiety as if a caveman was exposed to a lion or a tiger.
Okay.
So
because it's like we live in a fairly easy society. There's no real need to survive at the moment.
Correct.
Like
so our survival, our awareness and our need to survive has been shifted to more menial things. And now anything as simple as a text message can send us into the same frenzied state that a pack of lions would have millions of years ago. But the idea is that stimulus response is still the same. All the way our body acts, the way our brain reacts, it's still exactly the same as it was way back when. Okay.
So then how like, in your opinion then, how should we live our lives? Do we turn off? What do we do? Like,
I think we just uncomplicate it.
Okay.
And obviously easier said than done.
Yeah, what does that mean?
There's a few people that I'm a big advocate of minimalism as a lifestyle, but not minimalism in the idea of living in a box with nothing, but minimalism as the idea of you own less, not just things, but less stress, less thoughts, less everything. So just less, because I think everyone's so quick to fill their life up with so much. So between social media, you can get more information in 2 scrolls than our ancestors would have got in 1,000 years. Right? Having less clutter in your space means there's less stimulus for your brain to be distracted by, because our brain is programmed at every moment in time to analyze the environment. Right? So something, for example, as simple as lights. Humans are essentially programmed to sleep at about 10 and wake up at 6, roughly, based on melatonin and the sun rising and falling, and in winter we're meant to sleep more, and that's based on the level of light. But what we've done is we've added light as a stimulus all day round. Now you have insomnia, now you have people not being able to sleep, now you have people trying to run on 2 hours. So even something as simple as when it's dark, be in the dark, right? When your body's tired, go to sleep. Just try to do less and be less, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. But there is something to be said for that dark thing, because I know that once I turn my devices off, whether it be a computer screen, phone, whatever, I can get to sleep pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
While it's on or there's light in the room. I like to sleep in a real dark room, like a really dark room.
And people think that's psychology or preference, but that's not what it is. It's actually melatonin. Yeah. So it's a chemical that essentially is broken down by light.
Is a circadian rhythm? Is that the word?
A little bit.
That's the word, isn't it? Circadian rhythm.
Circadian rhythm.
Circadian, yeah.
So basically what happens is when it's dark, that is when there's no light, dark doesn't exist. It's just an absence of light. Yep. So when there is no light, melatonin builds up. Okay. And once melatonin hits a certain threshold, then it starts essentially the sleep cycle. Your body starts to wind down. Yeah. But as long as there is light, melatonin is broken down. So light breaks down melatonin. Okay. Which means as long as you are being exposed to light, your melatonin is never reaching the threshold to start that sleep cycle.
Okay.
Right? Yep. So the reason people can fall asleep using their phone or whatever, that's just because they're absolutely exhausted and in sleep debt, right? Yeah. Because our brain is not evolved enough to distinguish between synthetic light and the sun.
Okay.
Light is light.
Yeah.
Right? So basically what we're doing by watching TV right up until the last minute we want to sleep, or having the lights up in the room and then just going, I'm going to go to sleep now, and turning the lights off, you're not allowing that time for the melatonin to build up to a point where it starts that healthy sleep cycle.
Okay.
You're going to sleep, but that first hour your body's trying to go, okay, we got to speed things up here and start to get to the sleep cycle.
Okay.
So while you think you're sleeping for 8 hours,
what's a good routine
it's taking
So
an hour.
how long should I be devising off for before I... What's
People have different opinions. As a starting point, 30 minutes, but generally an hour, which is significant. I try to do an hour where possible. That is off the phones, phone flip down, on silent, all the rest of it. Close the blinds, no lights, no nothing. Obviously, sometimes you fall asleep sooner than others, but the point is that your body is able to actually biologically fall asleep, not just you trying to
build up the melatonin and then
that's it.
And then that probably has a flow-on effect of sleep quality.
Absolutely. So it's quality versus quantity, obviously, because you can fall asleep, that is, be unconscious, but there's a few processes that need to happen while you're sleeping. One, everything needs to shut down, but then two, repairing of your muscles and your nerves and your brain needs to happen. And unless the melatonin has reached the level it needs to reach, it's not happening. So when people wake up sore and stiff and whatever, more often than not, it's because their body hasn't been able to go through that whole repair cycle because they used their phone right up until midnight and then decided they wanted to sleep at 12:01.
Yeah.
And then it took their body an hour or 2 hours to build up the melatonin to where it needs to be. So while they think they slept 8 hours, they slept 6, and that's not enough.
Yeah.
So another thing that affects it is food.
Okay.
So eating, generally, an average meal can take anywhere between, half an hour and 90 minutes to digest. And that's without getting into really heavy red meats and stuff, which can sometimes take a bit longer. So if you're eating within the hour of going to sleep, in terms of our body's priorities, food is like number one. When there's food in there, you had a food coma before?
I think so, yeah. Probably.
That's because all of the blood in your body rushes towards your intestines.
Oh, yeah.
Your intestines actually has one of the most dense blood supplies in the body, your intestines and your brain. Basically, whenever you're eating, all of the focus of your body is on your intestines. So if you've just eaten and now you get in bed and you're like, okay, body, I want you to slow down, repair, build up enough melatonin and digest my food. It's not going to have a good time. First, it's going to digest the food.
Yeah.
Then in the background, it's going to slowly build up the melatonin, but it's also battling between, do I start the sleep cycle or do I finish digesting my food?
Okay.
So then you've got two opposing forces, and it can take you 2 or 3 hours of your sleep to actually start the proper sleep cycle of repairing and reconsolidating information and all the rest of it. So really, technology, light and food shouldn't be on the radar an hour before sleeping.
Okay. That's a good one. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said for that, because growing up, I was a big TV before bed. I had the TV in the room. I was spoiled as a kid. And I would fall asleep to the TV on.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I moved out of home, and my first partner that I lived with, she never had a TV in her bedroom growing up. And I was like, I remember we were like organising our furniture for our first place. I was like, we'll get a TV in the room. She's like, no. And then I was like, what do you mean? She's like, no, that's the worst. Like you want to go to sleep, like in your bedroom, don't have TV. And I was like, at the start, I was a little bit soft, and I was like, all right, I'll go with it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that my sleep was way better. Like there was an instant shift that I felt like I was getting a much deeper sleep. And then till this day, I don't have a TV in my room. So
it's good. There's something actually.
But I'm on my phone all the time.
There's 2 reasons a TV in the bedroom is no good.
Yeah.
One is because of the light, but 2 is because of our brain's associations with activities and spaces. So a lot of studies suggest that the bedroom should be reserved for sleeping and sex.
Yeah.
Once you start to introduce TV or study or work, this is something I do with my students. So, for example, working on your bed.
Yep.
right? Or watching TV in the bedroom. Your brain associates those activities with that space.
Okay.
So now when you're studying, on your bed, you feel sleepy. And when you're trying to sleep, your brain is wired because you've always tried to keep it in a state of focus for your study. So it's actually detrimenting both activities.
Okay.
So having TV in your room, you associate the TV with sleeping and you associate the bed with the TV.
Okay.
So when you're trying to sleep, your brain is like, I need to watch TV or be wired. And when you're watching TV, you're like, I'm tired, I want to sleep. So you're actually, you're hurting yourself on both ends and you're starting to associate them with the wrong thing.
Okay.
So really there's something to say about the spaces in your house and what activities you do in those spaces.
So what are some no-go ones that people are probably doing all the time?
Studying on your bed, huge no-go.
Can study, so go back and study, can be learning anything? Or can it be like doing your work? Because I don't mind, like I've done emails and stuff.
Doing any kind of
just
focused, busy work
just not in your bedroom.
should not be done.
What about if you lived in like a really small space, 1-bedroom apartment, and you had the desk in the bedroom?
So it's
still?
The preference is not at all, but
Okay.
the second best thing is zones. So having zones in the room, for example, if you have a desk in your room, no clothes or anything to do with other activities aside from work should be on that desk.
Okay.
Similarly, no work stuff should be on the bed because our brain is able to compartmentalize to some degree, and it can say, all right, when I'm at my desk, I'm working. But remembering what I said before, our brain is constantly taking in the surrounding environment.
Yeah.
So if your bed is in your sight, your brain is processing, what is that? What do I use it for? What goes on there? And sleep is now on your mind.
Okay.
So it's really about what you can see, touch, feel, hear.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about the sensory learning experience with students from two perspectives. One, it's making the environment work for you, not against you.
Okay.
And two, the biggest point being that the more of your senses that are engaged in an activity at any point in time, the more thoroughly that learning is occurring.
Okay.
And so, for example, if you're just looking at something, you're probably not taking in it as much. But if you're looking at it and it's making noise and you can touch it and it has a smell, all of a sudden it's something a little bit more memorable and you're more likely to remember it, engage with it and understand it. So that sensory experience is really important. And the biggest part of that is your environment. When you're sitting at your desk, what can you see? If you can see your bed and your TV and pictures of your best mates, your mind's not focused on the study.
So your tip would be clear everything from your study desk, your study areas, compartmentalize your sleep from your study. But what other things in the house? Because you said that the whole house is full of them. So what else? Or like, what else is it other than learning? Like,
I have a really weird habit.
Yeah, is it because you know this or?
Yes, it's because I know it. My brain is sometimes a little bit annoying in that when I know something, I can't help but action it, either subconsciously or consciously.
Well, if it's positive, yeah, of course. Like,
so, for example, it's very hard for me to eat anywhere aside from the dining room table.
mm-hmm.
Like I can't eat on the couch.
Yeah,
it doesn't sit well with me.
I prefer that as well.
If I'm,
but why? What's the?
Because I
reason behind it?
associate activities with areas.
But why is that good for your brain to eat at a dining table? Because like, what, in the caveman days, surely we just ate.
It's
where
not that.
We just ate by the river where we caught the fish, right?
There's a few different things. Again, it's about uncluttering. Less is more.
Okay.
The simpler you make your life, that is, the more basic things are. 1 + 1 = 2. Food equals dining room table.
Yeah.
Right? Not where am I going to eat tonight? Am I going to watch TV while I eat? Am I going to this? Am I going to that? Blah, blah, blah. The simpler life is, the easier it is. The more you automate your life and make it habits, then the more that your brain frees up to focus on the things you care about and learn and grow. Right?
Is that why you hear some of the super CEOs like Zuckerberg and stuff just wearing the same clothes?
Absolutely. So
I think Bezos does that as well.
Yeah.
I think.
So I have 16 items of clothing.
Yeah.
Which 16 doesn't mean anything here or there, but compared to your average woman my age, that's significantly less than usual.
How do you chop something?
What do you mean? How do I chop something? How do I get rid of it?
Yeah, you got 16 items. Like, do you pick some? I guess I don't have a lot myself, but how do you then? is the 16 the key, or is it you just so happen to have 16?
I just happen to have 16 at the moment.
It can go up to like 22 or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But there's so many principles that come into this. There's Marie Kondo's, does it bring you joy? Right.
Okay.
She's a minimalist that is a lot more emotional, like a lot more hold something, grab it, touch it. Does this genuinely make you happy, or is it a space waster?
And then
if it wastes space, give it away.
Oh, really?
Right. That's one. So Marie Kondo tackles it from an emotional side. Then you've got the minimalists.
But hang on, just getting back to that though. A hoarder would say that having those stack of magazines on those tables does bring them joy.
Yeah. It's not easy.
So that's why they don't get rid of it. That's why they end up in that state. So
it's not easy.
But I guess is being a hoarder like a sickness, like versus
it's not being.
You're
a
saying
sickness.
that someone that has a regular relationship with.
It's a high level of sentimentality, which I think is somewhat encouraged.
Yeah,
it's not a sickness or anything like that. It's neither here nor there. But from my own experience, the more stuff there is around you, the more you have to think about, the more you have to manage, the more you have to clean, the more that your brain processes every time you walk through a room, more.
Yeah.
It takes away from your focus and your life and everything like that. That's just the minimalists tackle it in a little bit of a different way. I can't remember their names to save myself, but
that's okay.
Their title is The Minimalists.
Just explain it, yeah.
They look at it a bit more logically. So, for example, they have the 20-20 rule. If you can replace it in less than 20 minutes for less than $20, you don't need it in your house. So that goes for people who have drawers and drawers of miscellaneous items.
Like what? Like
so some people have 3 or 4 drawers of miscellaneous items, and one of them might be they went on a camping trip one time 3 years ago and they've got Flint in their drawer in case they go camping sometime.
Yeah. Or they had something left over and they keep it there.
Yeah, and they've left it in their drawer.
Birthday candles.
Right, yeah. Birthday candles. Cables from old phones and old electronics, right? First of all, you'll never need it again. But if you needed it again and you can get it in less than 20 minutes for less than $20, you don't need it in the house.
And that list will just be growing with the internet.
Huge.
Yeah, okay.
And then they have the 90 by 90. So if you haven't used it in the last 90 days and don't have a set event or task that you need to use it for in the next 90 days, you don't need it.
Okay.
Right? Obviously, they make huge disclaimers. Like if you go camping once a year, then you have your camping year and you use them, blah, blah, blah. But they're talking about clothing, for example. So if you haven't used it in the last 3 months, essentially, and you're not using it in the next 3 months, you're probably not going to use it. Right? So they approach it from a more logical perspective.
But there is something to finding something under your bed that you haven't used in a while or seen something and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Then do you use it?
Yeah, for a little bit.
And then what?
Yeah, then probably goes back there.
Under your bed for another 3 years for you to find it again.
Well, not when I was a kid, under my bed. Yeah. That was the best. Like cleaning your room and then finding something and then spending the next 15 minutes not cleaning your room. But I guess that was to get out of cleaning your room.
Yeah.
I said cleaning your room a lot then, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's that clarity and clearing the mind. People tackle it from all different angles. So Atomic Habits talks about automating a lot of your life. Again, the more of it that is streamlined. Go back to
Atomic Habits. Who's that? That's James Clear. Yeah. The
more of your life.
That's a good book. I've read that one as well.
Very good. Very practical. Really easy to put into action.
Yeah.
The more of your life that is automated and habits, the less stress. Right. So, for example, I don't have to get up in the morning and decide what I'm going to wear because I have 2 dresses that I alternate between to work. Right. Some people might look at me and go, why are you wearing the same clothes over and over again? Blah, blah, blah. But I've eliminated any decision fatigue that I have in the morning. Right. I eat the same thing every single morning. No decision fatigue. People go, well, doesn't life get boring?
Yeah. What do you eat in the morning?
Usually a shake.
Usually.
Yeah.
You said it's the same thing. But yeah, a shake. So, and like a particular.
Yeah.
Yep. And then just shake it.
It alternates week to week. Sometimes it's a shake, sometimes it's a few boiled eggs.
So going back to that, I think that was important because what you said, because I feel this as well, and I think that that'd be magnified times 10, is like being a woman in the workplace, and you said that you wear the same thing twice, like you've got 2 alternating options, and you wear them over and over again.
Yeah.
Do you feel any social pressure or stress about that, or how did you get over that? Obviously, you don't
used
because
to.
you do it.
Yeah.
So how did you get over that?
I used to. I was in a workplace where there were very fashionable young women who used to wear different clothes every day, and it was always of a very high kind of glamorous standard.
Yeah.
As an individual, I've always placed more value on my abilities and my mind than my appearance, so that made it easier for me in general. But I also like to do social experiments. It's a big thing that I love. And what I actually did at the time was I wore the same dress all week.
Okay.
So I wore the same dress every day. And aside from the two women, no one said anything and no one cared.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was like, well, no one cares. I think one thing that one of my aunties told me was that
Go ahead. Yeah.
we think people are thinking about us and looking at us a lot more than they are.
Yeah.
Most of the time, no one cares that you exist or that you're there as long as they're getting what they need from you.
Very true, yeah.
As long as I was doing my job, which I always have put a consistent effort in to do, it didn't matter what I looked like or what I was wearing. So that made it really easy for me.
And people are so concerned about themselves that they probably don't notice you anyway.
Yeah.
I've always been told that one.
Yeah.
And I guess if that was the case, they're probably worried about they've worn the same shirt, but you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So how did you get approached when that happened? Like you said, the two women approached you. What did they say? Like, are you wearing the same thing? Like, how was that conversation? What was that conversation? What was the purpose of that conversation?
It was more like 4 days in, they're like, I like that dress.
Oh, so repetition.
Yeah. And like, you've worn it for a few days. And I'm like, yeah.
Okay. So they noticed that
They noticed.
But then they said that they gave a compliment. So I like it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's more like they were probably asking probing questions for me to tell them why I've done it.
They're probably waiting for some goss like, I haven't been sleeping at home.
Yeah. They're probably waiting for something like, I've been a week at Joe's house or whatever. So, there was that.
Yeah,
and they noticed and they mentioned it, but I just kind of shrugged it off. And now, like I said, I've got two alternating. It takes me 2 minutes to get ready in the morning. My washing is on a really regular cycle. After 2 wears of that, I wash that. After 2 wears, I wash that. Like everything is just so automated that I'm no longer worrying about when or where or how big the load is or when I'm going to do it. I'm no longer spending time in the morning trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Everything is just really easy.
Yeah,
and I think because all of that basic stuff that is really easy, it gives me more time to focus on some other things. So I try to read at least 1 to 2 books a week.
Okay.
I have more recently started working on automating my morning routine and get me into a bit of a zone. But a lot of women, way more than you think, wake up and stress for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning about what to wear, how to do their hair, how to do everything.
I stress about that sometimes.
Yeah.
So like I don't.
So imagine never stressing about that again.
Yeah. And I don't have as much social pressure to look a certain way that I'm sure that women get put under. And I think it's very interesting time at the moment. I think 2020, 2019, these next couple of years, I really feel like a huge movement towards social equality and the women's movement and so forth.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? Like
that's a wide net.
No. But you as a female, young female, so you're 24, right? You're kind of in this like pocket where it's your generation that's really pushing a lot of this social change. Do you find yourself personally, on reflection, it's the best time to be a woman?
Yes and no.
Okay. Tell me the yes and tell me the no.
Yes, because of all of these changes, there's a lot of movements to empower women.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk, a lot of ideas, a lot of initiatives to just make women feel good and go forward and work and study and do all of that. I've personally never needed that external empowerment to do it. Mm-hmm. I've been doing it. I've did my 2 degrees. I've been in the workplace working my way up with my brain and my skills as opposed to anything else. Like I've been doing it. But it's good that women are having the opportunity to do that. I think what we're seeing a little bit is that there's no secret that women in the past have been treated in a certain way because of their status. We can't deny that there was a status quo issue and women were at the bottom of the ladder. And we used to get ostracized and treated pretty poorly by men. But I think what's actually happening now is women against women, which is really hard. There is this.
Hasn't that always happened though? I've always had that opinion.
Yeah, but what's sort of happened now is that there's these super leftist feminists, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. Great. Good for you. But if I'm not that, now I'm letting all the women down.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And their idea is that women should be able to do what they want and say what they want and feel what they want. But because I don't agree with them, I'm against all women. And it's just, it feels really contradictory and it feels really hard to get around because of that.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is they're rallying and doing all of these things instead of doing, as bad as it sounds, what men do and just not caring about all of that.
Yeah.
Put your head down and work.
Yeah, okay. The one thing that you spoke about then was if you're not all in, what I call tagged the comply culture.
Yeah.
And that really annoys me big time because I'll look at politics or I'll look at certain things and I can see the good in a message and I can see the bad in a message.
Yeah.
I can see the good in a person and see the bad in a person, but then if I see the bad in the person, they have a good message. And I'll look at the message for what it is.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people can't disassociate with that. Like,
Correct.
For example, Donald Trump or ScoMo, they're huge examples of people that they get judged for being a bad person. And then so any policy they come out with is automatically bad.
Yeah.
And that comply culture sucks. And it's never been so more prevalent today because we can associate everything you've said to like your complete stance on things.
Absolutely.
Like for example, I'm on the right side of politics, but I think climate change is real. Like I'm a big proponent of that kind of stuff and in the environment, the way it works and how that is. Like I work in renewables for God's sake, So, and people sometimes think it's a contradiction in terms of that. But so you're saying that you find that a lot with women, and that's kind of the cause as well. But then, how do you get over that? Like, how do you defeat that?
Honestly, I just don't care.
That's probably the best attitude.
I just don't care enough to let it affect me. Like I have enough going on at any moment in time.
Yeah.
Whether it's my own personal development or with my family or with my work. Yeah. It's just too much.
So how are you coaching the youth? Because you are coaching youth in their education, their system processes. So are you finding that kids in high school age are choosing subjects that are more gender specific? They're breaking down that barriers. Like, is it still there at the youngest age, or are you getting girls now that are like, you know what, I'm going to do woodwork? Like,
I think it's a lot better now. Happening? I don't think that's as much of an issue. I don't think that's as much of an issue anymore.
Okay.
I work with a lot of students that are across all different subjects, a lot of boys in arts and a lot of women in I guess more hard work subjects.
Yeah.
I think the important thing for me is I don't treat them any differently. Mm-hmm. And my whole process is focused on creating accountability to themselves, for themselves, and the only competition they have is with themselves. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter how well the person next to you or over there is doing. All you need to focus on is, am I 1% better today than I was yesterday? And those 1% is what really adds up and makes a difference, because 1% better every day is 365% better by the end of the year.
Okay,
so,
there you go.
Yeah.
It's true, 1% a day. Those little changes. And I think that's a cool thing that was covered in the book Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Listeners and viewers, you should do yourself a favor and read the book.
100%.
I recommend that. But the English cycling coach, there was the English cycling coach that took on the team, and his ethos was, let's improve 1%. And that was like to little things as painting the walls white so we could pick up where there's more dust, so we can have a more cleaner workspace, etc. It's going to give us a 1% improvement, etc. and so forth. So do you teach that to students? Is that something you live by as well?
It's all about the 1%. So week one, it's let's get your environment working. Once your environment's working, it might not feel like anything immediately or get you results immediately. But now when we introduce the second aspect, which is, 60 minutes focus summarizing, you've eliminated the distractions. You're already 1% better than you were. Yeah. Then when you get your summary right, now we're going to answer questions using the information that you summarized in that effective environment. So now you're 2% better leading up to that 3%.
Okay.
And it builds up. It's accumulative. So always just taking steps forward. And I think looping it back to the feminism is that they kind of just want to stay there and stomp their feet and hope that things change or get better or whatever. It's like, if you want things to change, do something about it.
Be the change.
You want a man's job, go apply for it. There's no...
Talking about that though, I've got female friends and they ask me a lot of questions about career and these sorts of things. I get into these conversations all the time. One of the things I find the most is that women are so worried about the rules and how things work. So like, for example, a job might have 10 descriptions in the job, like you need to have this qualification, that qualification, whatever. And I've had friends that won't apply for that job because they're like, oh my God, I don't have that. Where like I'll have 3 out of the 10 and I'll be like, I'll nail this job. Like bang, I'm applying. Like
there's studies around it. There's statistics around it that women are less likely to apply for a job if they don't think they're the perfect fit. Whereas men, who are naturally considered more cocky and inflate their abilities, are applying for these jobs even if they only fit 2 to 3 of the descriptors. So purely speaking in numbers, you have this job that has 10 requirements. All the women who don't think they're fitting all 10 aren't applying. All the men who fit 2 or above are applying. Now you have your candidate pool. Statistically speaking, you're more likely to hire a male, not because they're going to be better at the job than the female, but because with the pool that you're looking at, there are more men. So, again, my feminist friends don't enjoy when I say things like this, but if you want a job like a man, go apply for jobs like a man. Just go relentlessly spam every job that you're even vaguely interested in with your resume. Now you're in the pool. Now you're a number, and now you're increasing your chances of getting that job. So it has nothing to do with...
I wonder how that links to an evolutionary sense that, like, go out and kill everything, bring it back, and whatever we can cook, we'll eat. Versus like a woman has to be quite select or thing. Do you reckon that fits back to evolution? That's probably not the best
potentially
example. But
I don't think there's a direct link, but there's definitely a difference between how females and males operate physiologically and biologically, and we cannot deny that difference. I definitely think that when you're talking about cognitively and ability to learn and grow mentally, all of that, there is no difference. Anyone who wants to grow can grow. Anyone who wants to learn can learn. But in terms of our natural responses and how we manage our emotions, there is a difference, and people need to understand that difference. I see it, all the time, everywhere. If you look at a male and a female in the same situation, let's say at work, and someone gives them a bit of whatever, talks back, right? This is a generalization, and not everyone is like this, but more often than not, the woman is more likely to react in an emotional or volatile way and say that, that upset her or she was harassed or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with her feeling that way. There's nothing wrong with her reacting that way. But the reality is the male is less likely to do that. They're more likely to go, water off duck's back. Not a problem.
Or say something back.
Exactly. Or say something back. Why? Because men are evolutionarily meant to be in situations that they find tough. You're hunting or looking for prey or running away from a predator.
Or protecting the tribe or whatever.
Or protecting the tribe. You don't actually have time to sweat the little stuff. Whereas females... biological purpose, I guess, if we're just speaking purely from that perspective, was to take care of kids. So they needed to be very aware, very conscious of the emotional and physical state of that child. Is there a rash appearing that wasn't there before? Are they acting in a certain way? Are they crying? What's their face saying? They need to pay attention to these details, and they need to react in a way that allows them to emotionally connect with their children or their environment.
Yeah. Okay. So you said that obviously where there's differences in that level, biological level. Then what's your thoughts? You deal with students all the time. What's your thoughts on co-ed schooling? Should schooling be single sex? Like, should girls go to school with girls? Like, why not?
No.
We learn differently, don't we? Or what is that? How does that work?
No, because I'm talking about cognitive function and your ability to learn, process, and present information.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's a difference.
Okay.
Right. Me and you are presenting and processing and delivering information, learning about history. There's no difference.
Yeah. Okay.
Our view on that might be different.
Mm-hmm.
I might say, oh no, war is so sad, even though I probably wouldn't. And you're like, yeah, war is awesome. That's a power move. That should have happened. Blah, blah, blah. Our view on that is different, and that's fine. Okay. But our ability to process, present, and deliver that information, I don't think is any different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Because I went to a co-ed school, and I think it's like my learning was hampered a little bit because of it. Yeah. Like I was easily distracted, and I thought like I got not distracted like one distracted by girls, but like one like I thought I had to kind of like be a certain way, and I think if I was just with the boys, like my learning would be different. Like my behavior would be different.
It's not.
Yeah.
Well, in my experience, it's not. I've worked with students who are at co-ed, private, public.
And that's not a thing. Yeah.
It's not a thing because if you're not distracted by girls, you're distracted by the boys. Yeah, like I am friends with a lot of my students on social media. Mm-hmm. I like to develop that relationship. I'm very fully transparent. Look at me. Look what I do. Look what you do. Yeah. That's why I post a lot about how I be productive, how I stay productive during the week to show them that, you know, do as I do, not as I say. I want you to actually see that this stuff works and people are using it. Mm-hmm. But all the time in class, like the boys will be drawing shit or recording TikToks or throwing things at their teacher or trying to play the penis game or whatever in class. Like there's always going to be something. If you don't want to be there engaging with the content, it doesn't matter if there's boys, girls or cows in the room, you're going to be distracted.
But then going back to what you were saying earlier though, like if you're teaching like a war, a battle of war, and the like a stereotypical male response was, that's awesome, that was a power move, using the phraseology that you're using earlier. And then there was an emotional response from a female. But then if you can structure the learning in a certain way, can't you capture their attention better? So then they are, because like any subject that I learned or anything that I enjoyed, you are correct. I wouldn't be messing around. I wouldn't be drawing in my book, and I would be focusing more. So if you present the learning a certain way to boys and you present the learning a certain way to girls, will that gain their attention better?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Only because then also you shouldn't be presenting information from a biased perspective.
Okay.
Like the reality is
happens. Like
how they react. Of course it happens.
Yeah.
Of course it happens, but it shouldn't. So I don't believe that that's the way. I think blended learning models are necessary, a combination of online, in-person, practical, lecture, like the whole lot is necessary as opposed to this.
Just go over that a little bit. Blended learning models.
So blended learning models, it's a broad term, but basically it could mean a combination of online and in-person learning, a combination of small group and large group, combination of hands-on and that old didactic sort of me talk at you, you listen.
Oh, I hated that.
But blended learning means a blended model of learning. And I think that's important because every student will be able to engage at a different point in time. Yeah. Now, even though students aren't categorized as auditory or visual learners, that's false. It's been proven false many, many times. Yeah. Every person is a combination of everything. Yeah. It comes back to that sensory experience, which I spoke about at the start. It's about how many of your senses can we get focused on this one task at one time. The reason the didactic me speaking at you sort of way doesn't work is because all I'm doing is listening and most of the time looking at something that's not very stimulating. Yeah. But things like videos, models, activities, small group discussion, so you can see, hear, touch, talk about, think about. All of those senses are engaging and you're learning more effectively. And that has no difference whether you're a male or female or anything like that.
Discussion's definitely my favourite style of learning. Yeah. And I think that's why I've gravitated towards a podcast, obviously, because I love having conversations with people and learning that way and then going back and forth and challenging what was said and kind of learning that way. But then also as well, that practical hands-on stuff it's just second to none. Like, there's nothing better. Like this example you showed me here.
Yeah.
Like you could argue till we're blue in the face about is multitasking work or does it not? And you show me a practical example. I'm like, okay, yeah, great. I see that.
First thing I do with students is actually show them how their senses are working currently so that I don't have to prove anything to them. They're actually proving it to themselves. I didn't do anything.
Yeah,
you just showed yourself that multitasking is less efficient than doing things individually. So, for example, I'll say something like, when you walk down the street and you smell bread, what do you know is coming up?
Bakery.
Yeah. Okay. No one sat you down and explicitly said, hey, when you smell bread, there's a bakery coming up, right? It's a sensory connection between one thing and the other.
Yeah.
So you already have that built into you. So now what we need to do is use that for school.
Yeah.
When you're sitting in an exam room, what senses can you ignite that bring back that retention of information? So one thing I do is, for example, mimic the environment that you will experience in your exam in your study space, right? What does that mean? If you're at home with your feet up, stuff on your desk, music blaring in the background, computer in front of you, kind of writing, taking your time, whatever, you're associating that information you're learning with that space. Right? Now you're in the exam. There's nothing but a table, a pen, and a paper. Your senses have no association between this environment and what you've learned, which means trying to grab that information, trying to retrieve that information becomes almost impossible.
Yeah.
So by studying in that same kind of clinical, pared back, nothing but a desk, paper, pen environment, you're not just learning the information, you're associating the information with those settings. So when it's silent, when I'm sitting here with a pen and a paper, when I've got nothing else but this in front of me, this information is important. Now come exam day, you're sitting at that desk, your senses are already working for you, not against you.
Okay.
They're going, okay, this is a cue. This is our environmental cue that we need to now retrieve that information.
So how have you used that in the adult world? Because as I said earlier, a lot of my listeners will be adults. So how do we do that in the workplace? Like if I have a presentation coming up, do I practice in the boardroom?
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you have to deliver anything, you try to do as much of that work in the space you need to deliver it. Now, obviously, that's not always viable.
Yeah.
But anything like in the workplace, it's a little bit different because we're not necessarily required to study and then retrieve. It's more often than not, it's kind of tasks that you just have to do, and that's just about minimizing distractions in your environment.
Okay.
But in the event of a presentation, absolutely go present in that space. But more so, find a space, either at work, at home. For me, at the moment, it's at a cafe, that you associate just with work. So every single morning, I go to the cafe for an hour. It's the same cafe. I sit in the same spot. I have the same drink. I've got my laptop out. My phone is off. I don't check socials. I block my socials using my self-control app. And all I do is work. So every single day now, as soon as I sit in that chair at that cafe, my mind is already in work zone. And I can just smash more out in that 60 minutes than I do in the whole rest of the day.
Okay.
So it's about creating an association with a place that is work. And that's why don't do work on your couch or on your bed or whatever, because you're thinking about all the other great stuff that's happened on your couch and in your bed.
Yeah.
Right? So your mind has associated multiple other memories with that location. So using location to your advantage, have your environment work with you, not against you.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. What there's a cool thing that I read on one of your blogs, which goes back to similar what you're saying about an hour, how to use an hour effectively.
Yeah.
And I thought this was really cool, and I would like you to explain it to my audience. Do you know what I'm talking about? The tomato timer.
Oh, the Pomodoro technique.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you would pick that up straight away, but yeah.
Pomodoro technique. So it's been around for a little while. It's named after a tomato timer because a gentleman whose name I can't remember was Italian, and he kind of came up with the theory himself at the time.
Timer? What is a tomato timer? What's a tomato timer?
It's just a timer in the shape of a tomato.
Oh,
They use to cook tomatoes to a certain point, Italian, so they can make pasta
okay.
sauces and stuff.
yeah. So there's a sweet spot.
But it's called the Pomodoro technique specifically.
Okay, and why?
Basically, to skip to the end and move back, basically it's working within a half an hour block. You have to do 25 minutes of work and a 5-minute break. And then you go again, 25 minutes work, 5-minute break. But why does this work?
Yeah.
Few reasons. One, your brain can only stay completely and solely focused on one task for a short amount of time before it starts to wander, right? Why is this? There wasn't many activities that we did for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours at a time back in caveman days. There was always different stimuli we had to respond with. If we were still for 20 minutes, we're probably going to be eaten. So your mind can only stay focused on a task for a certain amount of time. After this, at about the 20-minute mark is when you might feel yourself reaching for your phone or opening Facebook or opening Netflix or looking around or walking to the fridge. So basically by just working for a 25-minute sprint, basically you're using your mind at its point of optimal work or capacity, right? So that's one. The second thing is distractions, right? The reason we check our phone, right, is because, I've got to do this for 3 hours. I might as well check my phone or whatever. Like, you don't know when the next time you're going to be able to check your phone is. You're in work, you're out of work, etc.
Yeah.
But if you know that in 25 minutes I'm going to be able to check my phone, how many texts or calls do you get a day that absolutely have to do or die be answered within 25 minutes?
Oh, very few.
Few to none.
Depends which psycho girl I'm talking to at the time.
I mean, if you're getting a call, if it's important, they'll call again, first of all. But the second thing is psychologically, you're working and you hear your phone go off or you don't, but you know that in 25 minutes you're going to be able to check it anyway.
And by the time, like that, if it happens at the start of the timer. So generally it might be like 5 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go.
10 minutes in, exactly. So you know that you can check it anyway, which means you're more likely to just finish what you're doing and then check it.
Yeah, okay.
So you're eliminating distractions. You're working at the time where your brain is, optimally focused. And then for that 5-minute break, you're encouraged to walk away from that space. Again, it's about the location association, and it's essentially turning your brain off and on again.
Okay.
Which is the most effective way to restart pretty much anything, right?
Yeah.
So in that 5 minutes, you walk away from the desk, you turn your brain off and on, you come back and you do another 25 minutes work.
Yeah.
And they're just like two superficial benefits. The other big benefit is, I'll use a student as an example. If I tell them to write an essay, a 60-minute essay, they're going to pull their hair out, right? Yeah. But if I tell them just write an introduction and one paragraph, they're like, yeah, I can do that. So for that 25 minutes, all they have to do is write an introduction and one paragraph. You're taking away that daunting feeling of writing a whole essay by breaking it down into small, doable tasks. So when I have a big project to do at work, I go, okay, let me just do this step and this step for the next 25 minutes, right? Let me tick those off my list. 25 minutes pass, they're ticked. Now I do the next two and the next two. Whereas if I just say, I'm going to work on this project now, I may or may not get through the first two, but because I'm thinking about the last 10, my focus is not on getting these ones right. So the Pomodoro technique, strongly recommend checking it out.
What's the best application for it? Is it for tasks that we don't want to do, or is it for tasks that we want to do?
Everything.
So you can apply it to all.
When there's things you don't want to do, it's good because you're going, I'm just going to do it for 25 minutes. Or when there's a big task that you don't know how to tackle or where to start, start by breaking it down into every little task that there is to do. Then choose 1 to 2 of those per 25-minute block and knock them off.
How many times can you do it in a row?
4.
Okay. And then after that, it's redundant?
After 4 times, it's recommended that you take a whole half an hour break and then go again.
So a larger gap.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting because anything like anything physical, or when I was a kid, I played the drums for a bit. And if there was just something that I couldn't quite get, my teacher would tell me just to stop and go away and do something else and then come back and you would nail it. Yeah. And the amount of times that was true, it was unbelievable. Is it works on that as well?
Absolutely. So the reason that happens is because your brain is wired to use the least amount of energy possible.
Yeah.
So once you do an activity, basically you carve a neural pathway.
Okay.
A series of neurons light up in your head. the best way for your brain to conserve energy is to just redo that neural pathway over and over and over and over again. So you're trying to do something different, but your brain's going, no, I'm just going to do the same thing I was doing because it's the least amount of energy required.
Okay.
Because your whole body, your whole brain is focused on getting nutrients, surviving, and conserving energy.
That's right, yeah.
So by stopping, walking away, particularly when you haven't actually reinforced that pathway too much just yet, stopping, walking away, turning it off and on, doing a completely different activity and coming back, then you have the opportunity to carve a new neural pathway. But the more you let it sink in that way, the harder it is to change.
Break a bad habit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's very, very interesting, the Pomodoro technique. I will admit I have used it since I read it on your blog, and I don't think I used it to quite that efficiency, but I will use it in the future. But it did work, I will admit. The 25 minutes I smashed it out. And it was good because it gave me the ability to, like you were saying, just put everything aside, because I know that I'll be able to pick that back up or whatever after the 25 minutes. But yeah, that's great. Any other tips or techniques that you have that could be applied from what you teach your students, that could be applied to being an adult, or I'm sure there's a number of them.
There's heaps of them. I try to start off with just some really easy, simple ones. Another one is your posture and your breathing. So if you just put your shoulders back and take a huge breath in.
Yeah. Do you want me to do that? Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So compared to before that breath, are you the same or more focused?
I don't know. Yeah, look, I can't tell from that.
That's fine. More often than not, when you're in a state of rut, that is you're anxious or you're caught up on something, and you just take that second to kind of take that deep breath and put your shoulders back. Aside from the benefits that are associated, psychologically and meditation and all the rest of it, from a physiological perspective and a biological perspective, what you've done is you've pushed a whole lot of oxygen through to your brain.
Yeah.
Because you've let a whole lot more into your lungs, which in turn has pushed it into your heart, which in turn has pushed it into your blood to your brain. And your brain operates on oxygen and glucose. So the more supply that you can give it, the more sharp and focused it is. Mm-hmm. So that's the important part about the breath. The other thing is all of your neurons meet at the top of your neck to hit your brain. Right? So all of your nerve cells there's a big cluster of them at the top of your neck. When you're bent down and hunched over, all of those nerves kind of have a bit of a bend in it. And if you imagine if you're driving down a straight road versus if you're going around a bend, which one are you over to take faster and more efficiently?
Of course,
a straight road. So by freeing those up and loosening them up and letting them all be available, that flow of oxygen around the body into your brain is just a lot more efficient. So being conscious of your posture, and obviously there's 1,000 other benefits that come with that in terms of, just long term, your muscles, your bones, your mind, all the rest of it. But obviously there's probably a theme here. I love evolution. I love the body. I love the physiology behind it. I love to know why we do things the way we do and why is that good for me and why does that work. So posture and breathing is another really easy thing to fix. So between that, optimizing your environment and your sensory experience and using the Pomodoro technique, if you applied all three of those for a week properly, you'll see a difference 100%.
Okay. That's fantastic. And I know that if you're listening to the Toddcast and you have a brother, sister, cousin, sister, auntie, whatever, whoever's in school age, and they want to reach out, you do some pretty awesome things as well with programs, and one of those is seminars. Would you like to tell us about some of the seminars that you do for school kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So as well as the one-on-one coaching, I do seminars on the weekends and seminars in schools. So if I work with the school, they get 5 or 6 seminars a year. But more importantly, these ones on the weekends are open to pretty much anyone in Melbourne who wants to attend.
Yeah.
It's
a really cool concept because like self-development and all that stuff we look at when we're older.
Yeah.
But building these habits at a young age, I think is awesome what you're doing. It's really attracted me to talk to you about, you're learning where you are because you're tackling these things from a different.
Well, the biggest thing is students not all students, but a lot of students want to do better. They want to get better grades. They
Yeah.
want to be good at school, but they don't know how and they're not shown how. So by putting them in this space, it's, you know, it's 4 hours. They get a lunch. I'm relatively young and was still a student myself until October.
Yeah.
It means that they can get someone that gives them practical tips that aren't scary, that they can go have a crack at and have a chance to get better, aside from their teachers just telling them, well, you're in the middle of the class and that's where you belong. Like, that's where you'll always be. Just giving the students the opportunity to learn and grow. And look, the reality is not all students want it and not all students appreciate it.
Yeah.
Some students don't understand the value in self-development and working on yourself, as well as some students just don't really care and don't want to get any better.
How often do you run these?
Well, throughout the year, so up until about August, I've got 3.
Yeah.
But during exam period, I can run up to 5.
Okay. And what are the ages, the age groups? What's the best?
Generally speaking, VCE students are year 11s and 12s, but I do open it up to year 9s and 10s who do want to grow their skills and take themselves to the next level. The program itself, I tried to make it as relevant as possible to the VCE system, so I really focus on that.
Okay.
But I do find that year 9 and 10 students who are conscious of the fact that they're not studying the best way do really find it beneficial as well.
Yeah. And then you also do one-on-one coaching in the home, so throughout the year. So
So one-on-one coaching is a little bit different because they get everything you get in the seminar. They get it as well. They often attend the seminars, but as well as that, they get it in a 12-week program. Okay. But alongside that, they have someone tracking their results and keeping them accountable. Yeah. So instead of me just telling you, hey, these are some really great tips, good luck, you've got me going, okay, well, did you do your environment? Yeah. How are your Pomodoros going today?
So you're in the home, you're looking at the environment.
I've physically set up workstations for students. I've bought them timers before so they can use timers on their desks. I text them throughout the week going, hey, you know, you said that you were going to do this.
Yeah.
Have you done it? So not I told you to do this or have you done this for me? It's them setting their own goals, but then someone just helping them to stay accountable and get that done. So I guess that's a difference in the one-on-one coaching you get me. I get essentially holding your hand at the start, but after that, my motto and what I live by is that if I'm doing my job right, you won't need me anymore.
Yeah.
So after I've taught you all of those skills and I've helped you apply them a few times, you won't need me there. Then you can grow and learn on your own.
Yeah, well. So if you are sitting at home and you want to be a part of it, how do we reach you?
Yeah, the best place to get all the information and even reach out is my website, so truecoaching.com.au. There's a section on my seminars, on my school programs, and on my one-on-one coaching, and there's contact forms and contact information there. Otherwise, if you're more on your socials, I'm quite active on my Instagram, which is truecoachingau. You can DM me there or
slide in the
interact
DMs
with me there.
Get some coaching.
I'm quite active on that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Dee, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, and I've learned so much already.
Thank you for having me.
But yeah, it's you've got such a refreshing mindset on so many things, and I'd love to have you on again, of course. But if you want to get in some coaching, I think you'd be a great role model to some young students, and
thank you very much.
And you're shaping the future. So yeah, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. That was another edition of the Toddcast.